Are you someone who has more than one job, a budding side gig, or access to multiple different retirement accounts? Well, keep listening as we show you how to navigate and maximize all of the tax protected accounts to your benefit. Hello, and welcome to the Wealth Minded MD podcast with your money best friends. I'm Dr. Alicia Taylor.
And I'm Dr. Brittany Halford.
And of course, we're here to help you build wealth and make good money decisions so you can create the life you desire with more control over your time.
Hey, Alicia, one of the most important financial tasks we do as doctors is protect ourselves, which means getting the right insurance. I recall purchasing my insurance policy just a few days before I graduated from residency. What was your experience?
So I got my insurance when I graduated from medical school right before I started residency. I actually called a few agents, but I had the best service from Pradeep Auto at PKA Insurance Group. He was super responsive and personable. Unlike some of the other agents, Pradeep actually got me quotes from all the major companies and actually took the time to explain the nuances in each of their policies. What I love most is that he wasn't just this way for me. Whenever I would send one of my friends to him, he would not only speak to them, but he'd also let them know where to go or who to contact if there were better options or discounts available.
At PKA Insurance Group, Pradeep Auto and Matthew Peterson are independent brokers focusing on disability and life insurance. They excel in securing coverage for physicians and other medical professionals. Discounts on disability insurance can range from 10 to 40% depending on your situation. And there is now an A-plus rated carrier offering up to $10 million of life insurance without lapse. If you are very healthy with limited to no medical issues, approval is likely in 5 minutes. Reach out to PKA Insurance to discuss your disability or life insurance needs at www.pkainsurance.com or call 1-800-258-1018.
All right, Alicia, I was at a networking event recently and they were talking about this Netflix show called Paradise. And I realized that I have not watched anything like any TV for myself in probably 8 months, except for like Octonauts, which is a show for my kids. So I just want to ask you, how do you balance staying up to date on what the latest and the greatest is? Do you spend time watching TV after you get home from work? How do you balance staying up to date, but also make sure you get all your stuff done?
Yeah. Well, first of all, Paradise is on Hulu. It is an amazing
Oh,
show.
on Hulu. Okay.
Yes. If you have not seen it, you and your husband watch it together. Thank me later. This show is amazing. I am not even a person who enjoys scary movies or thrillers or anything. It's not a scary thing, but it's more suspense, I guess, a little bit.
Okay.
I'm not a person who normally enjoys that,
Mm-hmm.
but I love this show. Very well done. Acting, superb. I wouldn't say I watch a lot of TV, but clearly more than you. And I think part of what allows me to watch more TV is I don't have kids.
Yes.
So you are reading bedtime stories and like chopping up little pieces of fruit. And I am basically enjoying my life. No, I'm just kidding. So yes, how do I balance this? I usually try to wake up pretty early in the morning, read a devotional, get a lot of work done in the morning. I'm most productive in the morning. So whether it's a day that I'm working from home or a day that I am going into the clinic, I get most of my productive stuff, try to get that done in the morning. And then obviously I'm working throughout the day. So by the time the day ends for me, whether it's 5 p.m., 6 p.m., something along those lines, I will usually go home, go to the gym, cook. I'm usually done with all of that by 8-ish. And that's when I watch TV. And now I'm a sports fanatic. And so most of the time I'm watching a basketball game or depending on what season it is, maybe it's a football game or something like that. So most of the time I'm watching sports, but occasionally I will watch a show. And usually that's because somebody has told me, hey, there's a new show out you have to check out, which is what happened with me in Paradise. So I am passing along the recommendation to you.
Okay.
But usually that is when I will do it. And I find that it helps me relax. I have some friends who love reality TV because it helps them escape their worlds and like enter into the lives of someone else. I just like to relax. And so watching fun TV shows or watching a game is one of the ways that I do that.
Okay. You've done with Paradise. Is there anything that you're watching now?
Yeah, so I have been watching Meghan Markle's new show, or Meghan Sussex. called With Love, Megan. And oh my
Mm.
gosh, Brittany, it is transforming my world. Basically, this lifestyle show where she makes crafts, cooks, has famous people come over. And it sounds like, Leisha, why are you watching this? Why is this so attractive to you? I don't know. I think the life that I'm seeing her portray is a life that I'm like, man, that would be nice. Wouldn't it be nice to wake up and be able to cook these amazing foods that taste great? She is an amazing host. And so whenever people come over to her home, she's like making nice gifts for them and making nice dishes for them and crafts and all these things. And I'm like, oh yeah, I want to be able to cook from scratch like that. I want to make welcome gifts for my guests. I want to host people. I'm inspired by this. I was talking to my friends the other day and I was like, maybe I need one of those fancy cooking pots and maybe I should make candles from scratch, have all of these things. So, yeah, my life is being transformed. I'm thinking about hosting more, channeling my inner Megan, I guess.
Okay, so you are trying to live vicariously through her.
Basically.
Alicia, I know that this is a money podcast and you're all about investing and working really hard to earn a good wage, but you ain't got money like Meghan Markle or
That is true.
so although it appears that she's doing all the crafts and making the meal from scratch, that is probably a one-time thing for the show. She had someone who cut up all of her vegetables, threaded her needles, whatever the case is. You don't have that type of support or money yet. So live vicariously. But to your point, when I went on vacation, I started reading a novel and it felt really good to just sit down and read my own book. And so I think, at least for me, listening to you talk, how can we build in a little bit more rest and relaxation instead of always having a deadline to meet and a task to complete? I'm still figuring that out, how to prioritize what really matters, how to ask for help, and making sure that part of the prioritization is myself and what things really, really matter to me. So maybe that's it. I don't know if that's it or if you just want to host more or what, but I also wanted to put it in perspective, not to kill your dreams. All things are possible. And I believe in you.
Well, it's so funny. I was watching one of the episodes and my boyfriend was here and I was like, maybe I should just be a housewife, make crafts. And he was like, what? He was just like, okay, let's just watch something else. So anyway, maybe it is just a me thing, but I am going to challenge you. Maybe watch one episode and let me know if she has that effect on you too. I'm curious what Kevin would say if you were like, babe, I think I just want to stop working and to be a housewife. I'm curious to see what his answer would be. He'd probably look at you very strange. Or maybe he would be incredibly supportive. I don't know. You're shaking your head no.
Well, I'm just not the housewife type. I wasn't built to be a housewife. I can cook, I can clean, I could do crafts. I actually enjoy doing crafts, but I don't enjoy cooking or cleaning. I know how to do them, of course. I don't have my own Netflix subscription or Hulu subscription. This is probably part of the problem of why I don't watch TV, because we're borrowing my nephews and the only one that hasn't been deactivated is the kids' particular session. And I'm too cheap to pay for it.
Hold on. You and your husband, I don't know your exact take home income, but I'm sure it is multiple six figures. So I think that you could afford.
I could afford it. You are right. I can afford it. I can afford almost probably most things that I want. But I have never been one to watch a lot of TV. And I know my personality once I get started, because Netflix just goes on to the next episode. I will spend 6 hours consuming some type of show in order to complete it so that I can free up my mental space. Because otherwise I'm going to be thinking about, oh, what's happening next? And it's kind of like an addiction. And so I just curb it by saying, okay, you don't have access to these things. We might pay for Hulu for a week or so, because I can't remember the Sterling Brown. Is that the actor's name? Yes. We really appreciate him from This Is Us, and I admire the man that he is. So we might watch that as a date night type of thing, but otherwise I just can't start. I cannot start.
Noted. All right. I just want to say Hulu's like $5.99 a month, but okay. Frugal Franny over here. Anywho. Okay. So that's what I'm watching on Netflix. There's also a new show, I think, with Kate Hudson called Running Point. That's basketball related. So I'll be watching that too. Anyway, since this is a money podcast, I actually have a money confession.
What is it?
All right. You're going to think that it's kind of crazy that I did not know this, but I'm going to confess that I didn't know this. I did not know that I had to pay a yearly fee for the board. I got my training in family medicine and then I did sports medicine, right? So I didn't know that I had to pay a yearly fee to the American Board of Family Medicine. I did not know this. I was made aware of this when I was talking to one of my friends who basically was lamenting on the fact that she needed to pay her board fees. And I was like, what board fees? And apparently it's a yearly fee. And it's more for me because I'm a subspecialist. And I did not pay it at all last year because, again, didn't know it existed. And sure enough, when I logged into my account, I could see that I owed last year's board fee and this year's board fee. So now I am going to have to pay $600 to the American Board of Family Medicine for these fees. So that's my money confession that apparently I missed that day in residency where we learned that we had all these fees to pay. And now I'm going to have to pay for last year's and this year's all at one time, which is money I was not expecting to spend.
I don't think they tell us this in a residency. Whenever we think about our high income, we also have to think about all of the costs that are associated with the job that we have. And this is one of the fees that gets me all the time. There are a ton of fees, our DEA fees. And this is one that I was also a little bit ignorant around. For us, it's called maintenance of certification fees. And we have to kind of take a little quiz every year. But yeah, I'm sorry, Leisha. And I hope there aren't any other unexpected fees, but it comes with the territory. I feel like having somebody who can keep us on task and help us to create a system of organization to understand when things are due, what we have to pay would be highly desired from my perspective because it's just a lot to keep track of, honestly. And don't feel bad because I've also been there.
I don't know if it costs $300 a year to keep me on track, but all right. You and I are both physicians, obviously. And so these are fees that we're used to paying. Do you happen to know if people in other professions also have these fees that they have to pay each year? Or is this like a medicine doctor thing?
I would imagine that dentists and lawyers probably have to pay some fee, but I'm not 100%.
Interesting. Okay. This is me
Yeah.
just lamenting about my job. As physicians, one of the most important things that we can do is make sure that we secure our income because a lot of our financial plans are contingent on our high doctor income. One of the things that you will need to do is make sure that you get long-term disability insurance.
Now, Pradeep and his team at PKA Insurance Group have a reputation for putting people over profits and always doing what's best. Do not hesitate to email PKA Insurance and his team today.
They will help you get the insurance you need with the service you deserve.
All right. So we've talked about our lives and the shows we're watching. We've talked about some fees that we are lamenting. Now it's time to get into our financial focus, which is navigating multiple retirement accounts. And Leisha, we've talked a lot about retirement accounts on this podcast, and I'm very grateful for them because they allow me to invest more money in a tax deferred way, and it allows me to reduce my taxable income. However, there are some nuances when we're thinking about the alphabet soup of 401ks, 403bs, 457bs, HSAs, solo 401ks, Roth IRAs. I mean, honestly, I'm so glad that I understand this now, but it's almost like you could be drinking from a water hose and still not understand it because that even what I talked about doesn't include all of them. Right? So I'm glad that we are starting to have this conversation that we can share our personal stories and help people to navigate what they should be using, when they should be using, and the benefits and drawbacks of doing that. Alrighty. I don't know if you want to just start out with why you have these retirement accounts. How does it benefit you besides what I talked about of investing money for retirement in a tax protected fashion and reducing your taxable income?
Back in the day, I think our parents' generation, these weren't as common. It was more common to have a pension. I remember my dad and my aunts and uncles talking about how you got to get a good job and you got to stay at that job for 30 years and then you get your pension, right? It was like they were working for so many decades in order to be able to retire with income. And I think the jobs quickly realized that offering people a pension is really expensive. And so they started really changing it up and offering these different retirement accounts instead, mainly 401ks, 403bs. It was like, all right, instead of us taking on all of the risk and being tasked with giving you a set amount of money each month or each year when you retire, we want you to have some stake in the game. So we're going to create this account. You put money into it and we'll match you and put some money into it as well. It'll grow over time. And then you can use that money in retirement. And so instead of us being tasked with giving you a pension, you are being tasked with investing money for your own retirement. And we're going to give you a little incentive to do that. And so I think it really shifted and you started seeing a lot of jobs stop offering pensions and start offering these different retirement accounts. Of course, some of your jobs have pensions. A lot of government jobs have pensions. Teachers, firefighters, a lot of public service workers still have pensions. But I think it's more common for us nowadays, Brittany, to really have these 401k, 403b retirement accounts. And like you said, when you contribute to them pre-tax, it decreases the amount of taxes that you're going to owe this current year. And it allows your money to grow over time tax-free. And so it's really beneficial, especially for us who tend to be in high tax brackets. And so as a result of that, I don't know about you, Brittany, but we try to like maximize it, right? It's like, all right, if this is going to help me save money in taxes and also help me build wealth that's going to grow over time, I really want to maximize this account. I'm going to contribute as much as I can to this account. I'm going to get as much of a match or extra free money from my employer as I can. And that, I think, is an easy concept to understand for a lot of people. But I think it gets really complicated as you start to delve a little bit deeper for two reasons. One is there's different kinds of retirement accounts. And two, because people may have access to multiple of them. So when we talk about different kinds, when you work for a for-profit institution, they call it a 401k. When you work for a nonprofit institution, they call it a 403b. When you work for the government, sometimes it's the TSP or the Thrift Savings Plan. Sometimes they have different names. If you are a locum stock or you make 1099 income, you can open up your own retirement account, SEP IRA, simple IRA, solo 401k, those kinds of things. And so there's different kinds of accounts. A lot of them do very similar things, but technically they may have different names depending on who you work for, how that organization is structured. But then what I really wanted to delve into today was the fact that we may have access to multiple of them. This is especially common for people who are employed at two places. If you have one main job and then maybe you work part-time at a different job, you may have access to the retirement accounts at both places. Or maybe you just have one main job and you make money on the side. And so now you can open up your own retirement account. So you've got your main retirement account at the job that you're employed at, and then you've opened up your own separate retirement account for some of your 1099 income. Then all of a sudden, we've got multiple accounts. And I think when it comes to having multiple accounts, now it gets a little complicated or can get complicated because these accounts have different rules. And then you start asking yourself, well, how much money can I stuff in here? What are the rules behind it? And I think that's when people start to have some questions.
Definitely. I too had some questions. Hey, our podcast is all about transparency. And I work for a single employer. I have my business, financial coaching business, and we have this partnership. And so having not only my W-2 403B, having my solo 401k and a Roth IRA. So that was okay for me. That was like, okay, I can manage all this. I understand all of this. And then there's my husband's situation where he works for multiple employers who offer a 401k or 403b with a match at times. Last 2023, I realized that both of those employers had the 401k turned on for him and that we had overcontributed. And I'm like, oh crap, what do we do with this overcontribution? This overfunded account? And then how can I do this more strategically so that we could take advantage of both matches and really make the accounts work for us? So I wholeheartedly understand how people can have questions. And so I think us talking through that at some point during this conversation about what does it look like? Can you actually overfund this account? And what does that mean? And how do you navigate leveraging both employer matches? But I don't know if you had planned for us to go there yet. So do you think that we should talk about maybe the limits, since that's kind of the question at hand here is like, what are the limits for these accounts?
Yeah, I do. And I want to pause and say that I commend you. I think it's really cool and just empowering to hear that you are the person in your marriage that realized, oh, he has both of these things turned on, right? It wasn't your husband saying, hey, babe, I think I might have overfunded this account. This is your husband, like living his normal husband life, doing his thing, making money, not concerned, not stressed about this at all. And you being like, honey, can you show me the documents? Okay, did you realize that you overfunded this? And he's like, I did. And then you are just problem solver, Brittany. Okay, I'm going to figure out how to fix this for us. And he's like, sure. It's just so funny to me because I think in so many other couples that I know, it is the guy handling the finances and the guy making these decisions. And it seems like in your marriage, or at least in this aspect, you are the one that's on top of it. And so I love this female empowerment. I love this for you, for the ladies out there. Ladies, we up one on the men. I love it.
All right, all right. So I receive all of that. I receive all of that. And I also want to say it's, of course, not a competition. We're not taking account, but you're right. Historically, women have been left out of the finances and have deferred that to their spouses if they are in a heterosexual relationship or partnership. And I also think that that can be okay as long as you are aware of what is going on. You might not be deep into the day-to-day movement, but you don't want to defer out of position of unawareness, a lack of confidence, a lack of knowledge. You want to defer because you're choosing not to do it. Just like I defer my house cleaning to someone. Not that I cannot do it. I know how to clean my own house, but I am choosing to use my time and effort elsewhere. And so that's where I want women to make that decision, that you are making a choice, not that you can't do it on your own. You're very skilled at doing it yourself, but you don't want to. And so therefore you're allowing your partner to do it, but you should still have monthly, quarterly meetings so that you're aware of everything. And honestly, my husband has just realized that, okay, this is something that I don't want to do. And this is something that my wife really enjoys doing. So he just gives me what I need. Just recently, actually, I was like, hey, can you send me your pay stubs? He's like, again? I was like, oh, no, those are your W-2s. I needed that too, but I want to make sure that we've turned everything back on. And so we have to have our meeting and just making sure everything is set up.
I love it. I love the place that you all are in your marriage, it seems, where he just like trusts you wholeheartedly. He's like, what do you need again? I thought I sent you that. Nope, honey, actually you didn't. And knowing you probably said it in his very loving, non-condescending, supportive way, which I am not as skilled at. So I'm going to take some nuggets from you. But anyway, I love this. So like you said, I think people who have multiple jobs can really run into this issue where it's like, okay, how can I take advantage of all of the free money that's available to me? What do I mean by that? How can I take advantage of the retirement match that is open to me if I am employed in two places, specifically speaking? You mentioned that's your husband's situation, right? He has two jobs, essentially. Both of those jobs have retirement plans that he has access to. And both of those jobs also offer a match. And so it seems like in 2023, he was trying to maximize that, right? This job gives me a match. This other job gives me a match. I'm going to contribute to the retirement plan at both jobs so I can get both matches. Sounds easy until you realize, which you did, that, hey, honey, there is a contribution limit. And in our quest to sort of get the match at both places, we have exceeded the contribution limit, right? And so now we got a problem on our hands. What do we do about this? How do we handle it? How do we avoid this next year while still taking advantage of all of the benefits available to us? And I think it's important to kind of talk about these limits. We started this conversation on our last episode, but I think it bears repeating here, is that when it comes to contributing to retirement accounts, there are two types of contributions. There's an employee contribution and there's an employer contribution. And oftentimes, I think we might confuse those two things. There's a limit to how much you can contribute as an employee, which for this year of 2025 is $23,500. So you get one employee contribution. That means no matter how many jobs you have, you only can make one employee contribution. So you can make that a full employee contribution at your main job, or you can split that employee contribution amongst multiple jobs. Regardless of how you do it, you only get one employee contribution, which is $23,500 this year. And it seems you're like, okay, but how can I fit within the confines of that limit and still get the matches at both places, right? And that was kind of your husband's scenario. So I guess before I talk about how I would have done this, I am curious, Brittany. We know in tax year 2023, you guys just overfunded. So how did you all avoid that same thing this year? What was the thing that you were going to try to do differently?
Yeah. So in 2024, how I at least conceptualize this is really understanding what are the benefits offered through my husband's employers, both of them. And as we talk about this, I'm going to be sending him an email like, hey, send me the updated benefits guide, because sometimes things change, right? Our employers negotiate different types of benefits as far as a higher match or lower match, et cetera. And so you want to make sure that you're up to date on what is the current information, what are the current offerings through your employer. So once I had an understanding of, okay, this employer offers a match of, let's say 50% up to $3,000, and that made me think, okay, I need to contribute at this particular employer this amount, $6,000, in order to get the full match from this particular employer. All right, so that's $6,000 contribution there from my husband as an employee contribution. And this is the limit. So if the limit is 23,500 minus 6,000, now he has 17,500 to distribute elsewhere. And then looking at the other employer's match and how is that based? Do we want to contribute all of it with this employer or with that employer? Just really understanding some of the nuances also of the investment options and which employer has the best investment options. In addition to that, it's getting complicated a little bit, but this conversation of understanding what is the pre-tax option and what is the Roth option and really fully maximizing that. So this is a conversation to also always have with your accountant and understanding how much do you have of your total retirement allocation in pre-tax. How much do you have in your total retirement allocation of Roth? Because for me, I'm not only thinking about tax deferred and tax protected money, thinking about what are the options that are available to us, but what is the overall tax diversification and what would be the strategy, not only today, but also moving that money forward. I think it's really important that we get up to date on what our benefits are, making sure that there have been no changes to the match. And then from there, understanding what you have to contribute to each employer in order to get that match, looking at those employers' investment options and understanding the cost of those investment options. Where do they invest? What brokerage firm? Do you like their customer service, et cetera? And then allocating the funds appropriately. And if they have a traditional, meaning pre-tax versus a Roth option, understanding, okay, what is my taxable income this year? Which one is going to benefit me? And then what does taxes look like in retirement? And what it will be my withdrawal strategy. So it's not so simple of just saying, put 5% here, put 10% here. There's a lot of thought that goes into it. And that's what the calculus that I do every single year and understanding how the distribution will look.
Okay, well, I see why your husband has deferred it to you. You know what I'm saying? As I'm listening to you talk, and I know this like the back of my hand, I'm like, ooh, that is a little complicated. Ooh, there is a lot to think about. For me, one of the things that I do is say, which job gives me the biggest match? And let me try to prioritize that first. So at my main job, we have a 7% match. I contribute 7% of my salary. That's where I started. And I say, all right, did I already fill up my employee contribution limit just with that 7%? And if the answer is yes, then that's all I'm contributing, even though I have access to other different retirement accounts. Or I should say, that's all I'm contributing as an employee contribution. If 7% of my salary does not already fill up that bucket, then I'm thinking, where can I allocate the remaining dollars? If I have access to another kind of retirement account that also gives me a match, then I'll put some money there. But I think for me, it's starting with putting as much money as I can in the retirement account that offers me the best match and also has decent investing options. As we mentioned before, when you're investing through your work's retirement account, you can't invest in whatever you want. You can only invest in the options that they select for you to choose from. Most jobs will have some sort of target date fund or S&P 500 index fund or total stock market fund, something along those lines, which is usually fine with me. I keep my investing pretty simple. But if you're someone who's a little bit more nuanced, then maybe you also want to take a look at the investment options. But when it comes to that employee contribution, I go with, all right, I'm going to maximize this by contributing the most money I can in the retirement account I have available at the job that gives me the highest match. And so that's sort of my first step. And if I have multiple retirement accounts and extra space, then I'll contribute more in those other accounts. The thing that I also wanted to mention, Brittany, is there is an employee contribution, and you only get one of those, as we talked about, but there's also employer contributions. When we think about these retirement accounts, yeah, you can contribute up to $23,500 as an employee, but the total account, you can put up to $70,000 in there each year, right? And so how do you bridge that gap? If you can only contribute $23,500, how do you fill up the account with the $70K each year? And we talked about how part of that gap is filled with employer match money. Most people don't get that much of an employer match, though, so there's still some left over. How do you fill in that gap? Partially how I fill in that gap is by setting up a solo 401k. Because I make extra money from my side gig, I can contribute up to 20% of my profits into that account. I have some solo 401k money I'm putting in there. I've set my solo 401k up to do a mega backdoor Roth, which means any extra space I still have in that account, let's say there's $10,000 of extra space, I can make that contribution as an after-tax contribution, convert it to a Roth, and fill up that money that way. It's not only how can I maximize my employee contribution each year, but also how can I fill up as much of that account space as possible? So that's one of the things that I think about each year Doing that allows me some tax diversification, as you mentioned. Some of that money is being contributed pre-tax. When I do my mega backdoor Roth, obviously that's Roth money. And so it allows me to have both some pre-tax and some Roth money in these retirement accounts. And as you mentioned, that's really helpful in retirement because the way a 401k works is you contribute the money pre-tax, it grows tax-free, but then you got to pay taxes on that money when you take it out in retirement. I'm sure when I'm retired and I'm taking the money out of the account, I'm not just going to want to pay taxes on everything I'm taking out of the account. So I'm going to want some money that is tax-free in retirement. I'm going to want to be able to access some money that I won't have to pay taxes on. And Roth allows me to do that. Having both pre-tax and Roth is very beneficial in retirement. And I've sort of set myself up to be able to make both kinds of contributions.
This is extremely helpful. As you are speaking, I'm like jotting down, okay, well, I need to know exactly how much of the contributions my husband's employer is making, because sometimes it's not based upon your contribution. It could be just an automatic employer contribution. That's how it is at my employer. Regardless if I contribute to my 401k or not, they are going to put into a 401k or 403b for me 10% of my salary, regardless if I make a contribution or not. And I think that this is really helpful when you have multiple employers because you want to make sure you don't exceed that 70K cap. But Leisha, you had mentioned during the last episode, and if you have not listened to that episode, then you want to go back and listen to that episode, that you might have two 70K limits. So I actually want to talk about this because I think that, at least for me, I'm starting to process, does my husband actually have two?
Yeah. So remember, the total amount that one can have in a retirement account each year is $70,000, at least in the year 2025. 23,500 of that is an employee contribution, and then the remaining can be an employer contribution. And when we say employer contribution, that's a contribution that your employer makes, right, as a company match, or an employer contribution that you make from being self-employed, AKA that you make from having 1099 income. And so you're asking about the limits, right? Because you're like, hey, is there one 70K limit? But what if I have multiple retirement accounts? Do I have multiple 70K limits? And I'm sure there's somebody listening to this like, first of all, who's putting 70K into a retirement account? And then you want to put 140K into retirement accounts? Like, how much does Brittany make? I'm sure that's what nosy people, AKA me, are thinking right now.
Future planning. My income is growing every year. And I hope those who are listening to the podcast that you think like this, like, okay, maybe I can't maximize 140K this year, but next year that's the goal. So all things are possible, people. Educate us. Girl, I need to know the answer to this question.
As you got me counting your wallet and your pennies, or I should say dollars. Anyway, so yes, if you have access to a 403b at your job, which means if you work for a nonprofit institution, there is one 70K limit. So if you work for a nonprofit institution and then you make money on the side and you open up a solo 401k for that, your solo 401k and your 403b at your job share one 70K limit. So if you contribute $23,500 as an employee contribution, and let's say your employer contributes $16,500 as a match, right? So we've got about 40K in the account. If the account maximum is 70K, then that means you've got an additional 30K that you can allot elsewhere. Does that make sense? I don't know if I confused you there. So if you contribute $23,500 as an employee contribution, your job does $16,500 as a match, you've got 40K in the account. So now you've got 30K left over to hit that 70K limit. Okay,
Yep.
So that's that. But if you work for a for-profit institution, so that means you have access to a 401k, there's actually a separate 70K limit. So let's say your husband works for a for-profit institution, and you'll know that because he has access to a 401k, and then he makes money on the side, so he's opened up a solo 401k, he gets two separate 70K limits.
Okay, I hear what you're saying. And I'm like, why? It doesn't make sense. Make it make sense. I know you're not the IRS or Congress creating these laws.
I don't know. It is a quirk with the 403Bs. So I don't know why that quirk exists. I don't know why if you have access to a 403B, you only get one 70K limit. And if you have access to a 401k, you get multiple 70K limits. I don't know the answer to that question, but I just know that that is a sort of IRS oddity, if you will. Hopefully that helps you and your husband. I don't know if you guys both only have access to a 403B or 401k. And of course, I think this is self-explanatory, but let me say this now is that I know that you and your husband obviously are married. And so you have access to your 403B at your job, right? So you get your own 70K limit. And then he is employed and works, so he gets his own 70K limit. So together, I guess you guys already have access to a lot, shall we say. of retirement space. The fact that you're asking me about even more is like, wow, I got rich friends.
I'm always future planning and the possibilities are endless. So, yes, thank you for educating us. And I'm going to be that rich friend. I'm going to be a richer friend in like 2, 3 years, Leisha. So, yeah, girl, we maxing out these accounts now. To your point, I think that this really helps us to understand okay, what are the options that are available to us? How do we make strategic moves? I was speaking recently at a networking event and I said to them, money's not complicated. It's all about understanding the rules of the game, understanding how when you move a piece, what is the impact of that decision? When we are creating our financial strategy, it may not be that you're implementing all of these steps right now, but you are planning your future moves, just like if you're playing chess, right? And you want to understand how this is going to impact you. So, in thinking about the impact of these moves that we're making, one of the things that is coming to mind is how do we consider and factor in taxes with this? Because if, say, for example, my employer or my husband's employer allows for a match of, actually, let's take your situation 7%, and that 7% consumes your contribution, but you have a match elsewhere and you want to take advantage of the additional free money. Can you over contribute? Can you overfund the account so that you can take advantage of both of those matches? Do you have any awareness of how does that play out? And then what are the tax implications of doing that?
You know, Brittany, I have thought about this. I just want to say if the IRS is listening, I have not overfunded anything. Don't come from me. I already paid enough taxes as is. Not trying to pay any penalties. But I have wondered this. If there actually is a penalty for over contributing, because technically speaking, there is the maximum amount that you can deduct as an employee contribution, which is $23,500. But if you contributed, let's say $25,000, you're going to be thrown in jail. Is there a penalty for doing so? Honestly, I don't think there is. I think that you can only deduct the 23,500, and so any excess you would have to pay taxes on, but I don't know if there's an actual penalty. I don't know if I've had the guts to actually try this out. If you have, let me know how it goes. I have actually asked a couple of people about this. And what I find is when I ask a tax professional about this, they're like, never been asked that before. Wow, you're in the weeds. How do you know this much about tax rates? Right. I'm definitely probably the only person that's asked them this question, but no one can really give me a straight answer. I don't know if you have had a different experience, but I know there's a contribution limit, but I don't know if there's any penalties for over contributing. I think you just have to pay taxes on the excess.
Okay. You know, we ran into this issue last year. All types of money mistakes. So 2023, we overfunded and we overfunded in a way that was not strategic. In 2024, we overfunded in a strategic fashion. And I'll let you all know how this played out. So I mentioned that you have your traditional contributions, those pre-tax contributions, but my husband also has a Roth contribution, meaning that that is after tax dollars that we are putting into a 401k. And because he has the Roth option, essentially what we did was we funded both accounts so that we could maximize the match, but then that overfunded portion, so the money that was going to go over the limits of 2024, 23,000, we chose for a Roth option. So we actually paid taxes on that money because to your point, my understanding was that there was only 23,000 that was deductible, meaning that we would get the tax benefit this year. So we made 23,000 a pre-tax contribution. And then the rest of the remaining that we needed to get the match, a post-tax contribution and a Roth option. We haven't filed our taxes yet. So I don't know if this is right or wrong move, but at least for me, it made sense. And we gonna find out.
Hey, I love the transparency. I love the risk taking. I love the maximizing of all of the accounts. So please enlighten us. We know it's tax time. I don't know if you and your husband are planning to file an extension, but whenever your tax professional looks at your tax situation, let me know if they're yelling at you like, Brittany, why would you do that? Or if they're like, hey, this was a smart tax move. So let me know. So then I can then use that advice. You teach me, okay? Come back to me. whether it's offline or online, and let me know what the repercussions of that, if any, were.
I will. I will. I think it's all about sharing knowledge, and it's not about avoiding taxes or doing things that are illegal. But if there are ways in which you can maximize the benefit of these accounts, why not take advantage? And I think that this is a great area that we need better defined understanding from either accountants or the IRS to define it, because it's not 100% clear, honestly.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of things that I wish the IRS would do to make things clearer and simpler, but they clearly do not ask me my opinion. So I think to summarize is realizing that a lot of us may have access to multiple different tax protected accounts. Whether those are retirement accounts at our job, retirement accounts that we set up on our own, or other kind of accounts like a 457B, which we'll do probably an entire episode on, HSAs and things like that. And so you want to really take a look and say, how can I maximize these accounts? And I think the first step is understanding the different kinds of contributions you can make, employee versus employer, and saying, all right, how can I maximize the employee contribution? And then how can I maximize the employer contribution? For the employee contribution, maybe make the most of it at the job that offers you the highest match, that has decent investment options. Any extra space you can deviate to other employee retirement accounts that you have access to. And then for those employer contributions, saying, all right, do I make money on the side? Can I contribute a percentage of profit? And can I make some after-tax Roth conversions to sort of fill up that space? So that's kind of how I've approached it. It seems like that's similar to how you've approached it, Brittany, although you kind of overfunded. And so we will see how that works out for you. But yeah, this was really helpful. It might inspire me to do a little something different next year based on what happens to you and your husband.
I'll let you know, Leisha. I'll let you know. And I think sometimes we make decisions and it's the wrong decision, but you make a decision with the expertise and the knowledge that you have at the time. And so hopefully we won't have to pay any penalties or withdraw any of the money. And if we do, I'll let you all know, because it could be helpful for us to avoid making money mistakes. But in my purview, if we have to withdraw the money, it actually wouldn't be a mistake, because I tried to do something with the knowledge and the expertise that I had at the time. And I did my due diligence of doing the research and talking to the accountants, and there wasn't a clear answer. So this is the decision that I made. If it works out, great. If it doesn't work out, then now I know.
Oh my goodness. All right. Well, keep us posted. Keep us posted.
All right. So now let's talk about fun money. This is my favorite segment of the podcast. Not that I don't like talking about the logistical stuff, but I always am curious on how you're spending your money. And just like you're trying to live vicariously through Meghan Markle, I'm living vicariously through Leisha Taylor. So girl, let us know. How are you spending your money for fun?
After watching some of the episodes of the show, haven't even finished it yet, but after watching some of the episodes of the show, I am inspired to host more. I used to do this a lot, and as my life has gotten busy, I've had less time, but I want to host more. So I think I'm going to have my girlfriends over, have a little wine, do a charcuterie board, have some fruit. I've gone to some of my friends' houses when they've hosted and they've had this entire spread of food. I don't know if I'll do the whole spread, but I am inspired. I love having people over. I love being around people, especially my friends and family. Yeah, I think I'm going to try hosting more. So that's what I'm going to spend my money on, probably some wine, charcuterie, and all that stuff, and hope that I don't eat it before they come over.
Well, I'll love to see your charcuterie boards. I've seen some very elaborate boards of what they include, even with snacks for kids. So hopefully you start to become an expert. It doesn't consume too much of your time, and your guests really appreciate it. I am not hosting. Hosting gives me a little bit of anxiety because I'm a perfectionist. So I like to have everything clean. I like to have everything prepared before my guests arrive. Oftentimes I don't meet that objective because my kids distract me at times. So I am not spending my fun money on that. But I am spending my fun money on networking events. Recently, I went out to this Mexican restaurant with Melanin Medicine, which is a nonprofit organization here in Boston. So, Kanisha, thank you for inviting me. And it was really nice to just sit with people and have a nice meal and talk about paradise or talk about money or what we're doing in our professions, and also connecting to say, what are your needs? How can I support you? And that's where I really found the most value. So I'm very grateful for that opportunity. I almost did not go. This is like my first one in 2 years, but I think I'm going to engage in more of these networking events, pay for the sitter, go pay for the admission or whatever it is, so that I can connect more with people.
I love that. that. I love that. I love being around folks as well. So let me know how that goes for you. And I am going to commend you for making time for that despite having a whole husband and multiple kids. You are inspiring me. There's so many people who have kids and I look at their lives and I'm like, oh my goodness, do you ever have time for yourself? So you being able to do this will give me a little bit more motivation. All right, everyone. Hopefully you learned something from this episode. And if not, at least you were entertained. We'll be coming back to you again next week.
Hello, and thank you for listening to our podcast. And because of that, we have something for you, our Wealthy Minds Blueprint.
Have you ever thought to yourself, I wish I could be better with money? Do you want to start investing and saving for retirement, but keep delaying because you don't know where to start? Our Wealthy Minds Blueprint is here to help.
This guide will teach you what you didn't learn in your training so you can stop being confused about money and start taking what we call wealthy-minded action.
We'll help you become a master of your finances and simplify investing so you can get started today. Take control of your financial future by downloading your free copy of the Wealthy Minds Blueprint now and start building the wealth you deserve.
Hello, everybody. It's me, Brooke. I'm recording a little disclaimer for my mommy, Dr. Brittany Halford, and her friend, Dr. Lisa Taylor. Just so you know, they're not financial advisors, tax professionals, lawyers, or financial planners. Everything you hear is for education and entertainment. It's not strict financial advice, So use your best judgment, chat with a tax professional, and all those other people that you need to talk to. Thanks for tuning in today. Keep cruising on your journey to wealth and wellness. Bye-bye.
One of the most important things you can do is ensure you have long-term disability insurance. Long-term disability insurance secures your income if the unexpected happens and you are unable to work due to medical illness, chronic conditions, or an accident.
Unfortunately, all insurance agents aren't created equal. Some of them are so focused on making a sale that they fail to reveal certain necessary information, tell you about discounts available, or clearly explain the process. Pradip Bhatto and his team at PKA Insurance Group are different. They have a reputation of putting people over profits and always doing what's best.
If you need life insurance or disability insurance, reach out to Pradip and his team today. They will help you get the insurance you need with the service you deserve.